There is something inside you that has never been broken. Not by failure, not by rejection, not by the years you spent wondering if you were enough, not by the people who looked at you and saw nothing worth believing in. There is something that survived every storm you walked through, and it is still here, right now, burning quietly in the center of who you are. That something is your consciousness, and it is the most powerful force in the known universe. I want you to stay with me on this, because what I am about to share with you did not come from a book I read on a comfortable afternoon. It came from the wreckage of a life I thought I had destroyed. It came from nights I spent lying awake, staring at a ceiling, asking a God I was not sure was listening, why is nothing working? What am I doing wrong? Is this all there is? Maybe you have asked that question. Maybe you are asking it right now. I grew up in a small town in Ireland, in a world that was very clear about what was possible for someone like me. You work. You survive. You don't dream too loudly. I was told, not with cruelty but with the quiet certainty of people who believed it themselves, that the world was fixed. That life was something that happened to you, not something you created. I absorbed that belief the way a child absorbs everything, completely, without question, without defense. And for years I lived inside that story. I struggled. I stumbled. I watched doors close on me that I did not even know I had the right to knock on. And I carried inside me this dim, persistent ache, the feeling that I was meant for something I could not name, living a life that did not quite fit. Then one day, everything changed. Not because circumstances changed. Not because someone rescued me. It changed because I discovered something so staggering, so completely world-altering, that I have spent the rest of my life doing nothing but sharing it with anyone willing to listen. Your mind, your conscious and subconscious mind together, is not a passive receiver of reality. It is the architect of reality. What you hold in your consciousness, consistently, emotionally, and with belief, you will find in your life. Not sometimes. Not by luck. By law. The same law that holds the planets in orbit and pulls the tide back to shore. Light does not ask permission to illuminate a room. It simply shines, and the darkness has no choice but to retreat. You are that light. You were born that light. But somewhere along the way, most of us were handed a shade and told to keep it pulled down. Ask yourself right now, and I mean really ask yourself, what beliefs are you carrying that were never yours to begin with? What have you accepted as truth about yourself, about what you deserve, about how far you are allowed to go that someone else handed you before you were old enough to question it? Because here is what I know after decades of studying the mind, working with thousands of people, and living my own transformation. The moment you change what lives in your consciousness, your world begins to rearrange itself around that change. Not eventually, not maybe. The process begins the instant the shift occurs inside you. You were not born to struggle endlessly. You were not born to dim yourself to make others comfortable. You were born carrying a light so specific, so irreplaceable, that the world actually needs it. And everything we explore together, right here, right now, is about learning how to let that light fully live. Every single thing in your life right now was once a thought. The chair you are sitting in, the city you live in, the relationship you are in, or the one you walked away from, the career that fulfills you, or the job that quietly drains you every Monday morning. Every single piece of the life surrounding you began as an idea in someone's mind, and the life surrounding you began as a collection of ideas in your mind. That is not poetry. That is not philosophy. That is the most practical truth I have ever encountered, and the day I truly understood it, I stopped being a victim of my circumstances and became the author of them. But let me be honest with you, because honesty is the only currency worth spending here. When I first came across this idea, that thought shapes reality, I rejected it completely. I was in my late 20s living in a rented room in London with very little money, very little direction, and an enormous amount of quiet desperation I was too proud to admit to. Someone handed me a book. They told me it would change my life. I read 3 pages, put it down, and said to myself, "This is for dreamers. This is for people who have not experienced how hard and indifferent the real world actually is." I was wrong, but I did not know I was wrong yet. I kept living the same way, thinking the same thoughts, expecting different results. And do you know what kept arriving in my life? The same results, over and over again. Because the mind does not care what you want. The mind delivers what you believe. And I believed, deep underneath all my hoping and wishing, that struggle was my inheritance. That just getting by was the most I could expect. That men like me, from places like mine, did not get to live extraordinary lives. That belief was running silently in the background of every decision I made, every opportunity I hesitated at, every door I did not walk through because some part of me whispered, "Who do you think you are?" Your thoughts are not just passing clouds. They are seeds. And the subconscious mind is the soil, rich, dark, indifferent to what you plant. It will grow roses. It will grow weeds. It does not judge. It simply produces what it receives. Plant fear consistently, and fear will flower in every corner of your life. Plant conviction, and watch what begins to take root around you. Here is what changed everything for me. I stopped monitoring what was happening around me and started monitoring what was happening inside me. Instead of asking, "Why is my life like this?" I started asking, "What am I thinking every day that is creating this?" That shift from outer focus to inner focus was the moment my life began to turn. You know what I realized? Most people spend their entire lives reacting. Something happens, they feel something, they think something in response, and they call that living. But that is not living. That is being a mirror. That is letting the world write the script and simply reading your lines. Conscious living, real conscious living, means you choose the thought before the circumstance demands it. You decide how you see yourself before the world tells you what to see. You plant the seed deliberately, with intention, with feeling, and then you trust the soil to do what soil was made to do. Ask yourself right now, what are you thinking about most consistently? About yourself. About your future. About what is possible. Because whatever your honest answer is, that is your current blueprint. And blueprints can be redrawn. That is where we are going next, into the part of your mind that never stops building. Right now, while you are sitting here, something extraordinary is happening inside you. Your heart is beating without your permission. Your lungs are expanding and contracting without a single conscious instruction from you. Your cells are regenerating, your blood is circulating, your immune system is working, all of it. Every single biological miracle happening inside your body right now is being run by a part of your mind you never consciously direct. The subconscious mind. And it is not just managing your biology. It is managing your reality. This is the part most people miss. They think the mind is something they use when they are actively thinking. When they are solving a problem, making a decision, planning a future. But the conscious mind, that thinking, analyzing, deciding part, is only the surface. Beneath it runs something infinitely more powerful. Something that never rests, never doubts, never sleeps, never stops working on whatever you have handed it to work on. And here is the extraordinary thing. It cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is vividly imagined. Let me tell you about a night that rearranged my understanding of everything. I was going through one of the most difficult periods of my life. A venture I had poured everything into had collapsed. My confidence was shattered. Every night I would lie down, and the moment the room went dark and the noise of the day disappeared, my mind would flood with images of everything that had gone wrong. Every mistake, every embarrassment, every moment of loss replayed on the screen of my mind like a film I could not switch off. And every morning I would wake up exhausted, defeated before the day had even begun. I did not understand at the time that I was doing something extraordinarily precise and extraordinarily destructive. Every night, in the quiet hours when the subconscious mind is most receptive, I was feeding it a perfect diet of failure, fear, and finality. And it was accepting every image, every feeling, every repetition, without question, and building my tomorrow accordingly. The night I understood this, I made a decision that changed everything. Instead of replaying what had gone wrong, I deliberately, consciously chose to plant something different in those final moments before sleep. I chose an image of myself standing in a life that felt whole. I chose the feeling, not just the picture, but the actual physical feeling of gratitude, of peace, of quiet certainty that everything was working in my favor. I held that feeling as long as I could, let it wash through me completely, and drifted into sleep carrying it like a lantern. The subconscious mind took that feeling and went to work. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily, consistently, the way a river quietly reshapes stone. Things began to shift. Opportunities appeared that had not been there before. Or perhaps they had always been there, and I simply had not had the eyes to see them. Conversations happened that opened doors. Ideas arrived in the morning that felt like gifts from somewhere deeper than my thinking mind. Because they were. The hours before sleep and the moments just after waking are sacred. Most people waste them scrolling through other people's lives, absorbing news designed to frighten them, or replaying the anxieties of the day. But those are the most fertile hours your subconscious offers you. Those are the hours when the gate between conscious and subconscious swings widest open. What you plant in those moments, you will harvest in your life. So ask yourself tonight, and every night from this moment forward, what am I handing to my subconscious as I close my eyes? What film am I playing on the screen of my inner world? What feeling am I soaking in during those final quiet moments before I surrender to sleep? Because your subconscious never sleeps. It is always listening, always building, always delivering, with breathtaking precision, exactly what you give it. Give it something worth building. Before the world ever had a chance to limit you, you learned to limit yourself. And the tool you used, the weapon you turned against your own potential, was a story. A quiet, persistent, deeply personal story that you have been telling yourself for so long it stopped feeling like a story and started feeling like the truth. About who you are. About what you deserve. About how far someone like you is allowed to go. I know this because I lived inside one of those stories for years. And I want to share it with you now, not because it is comfortable to revisit, but because I believe with everything in me that someone listening right now needs to hear it. When I was young, I wanted to be a healer. Not a doctor in the conventional sense, but someone who helped people move from darkness into light. Someone whose words and ideas could reach into a life that felt broken and offer it something solid to hold on to. That was the dream burning inside me from as far back as I can remember. But the story I had been handed, by circumstance, by culture, by the quiet accumulated weight of other people's doubts, said that dreams like that were luxuries. Said that boys from struggling families did not get to spend their lives chasing ideas. Said that wanting more than what you were born into was a form of arrogance. So I buried it. Not all at once. Slowly. The way you do not notice a fire going out until the room is already cold. I told myself I was being realistic. I told myself I was being responsible. And underneath those reasonable-sounding words was a story I had never examined, never questioned, never held up to the light to see whether it was actually true. It was not true. Not a single word of it. Here is what I have learned, and what I need you to really absorb right now. A belief is not a fact. A belief is simply a thought you have repeated so many times, with enough emotional weight behind it that your subconscious accepted it as reality. And once the subconscious accepts something as reality, it works tirelessly to prove itself right. It filters your experiences through that belief. It highlights the evidence that confirms it. It blinds you, systematically and efficiently, to anything that contradicts it. This is why two people can stand in the exact same moment, facing the exact same opportunity, and one sees a door wide open while the other sees a wall. They are not seeing different things. They are seeing through different stories. You know what I realized the day everything began to shift for me? The story was never mine. I had inherited it. Absorbed it from people who meant well but were themselves trapped inside their own inherited stories. And the moment I saw that, really saw it, clearly and without defensiveness, I felt something I had not felt in years. Free. Because if a story was given to me, I could give it back. If a belief was installed without my conscious permission, I could consciously uninstall it. I could choose, deliberately, powerfully, with full awareness, to write a different story. One that reflected not where I had been, but where I was choosing to go. Ask yourself right now, and be ruthlessly honest. What story are you living inside? What belief about yourself have you been treating as permanent that is actually just a habit? What chapter have you been reading over and over, convinced it is the whole book, when it is barely the first page? The pen is in your hand. It has always been in your hand. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you are willing to write something new. And the next step, the most powerful step, is learning exactly what writing that new story actually requires. Most of us were taught to pray from a position of lack. Hands clasped, eyes closed, begging something outside ourselves to please, finally, intervene. To fix what is broken. To send what is missing. To rescue us from the circumstances we feel powerless inside of. And I do not say this with any disrespect, because I prayed that way too, for years. With desperation. With the quiet underlying belief that whatever I needed was somewhere far away, held by a force that may or may not decide I was worthy of receiving it. That kind of prayer left me feeling emptier than before I started. And for a long time I concluded that prayer simply did not work. That it was comfort for the frightened, a beautiful illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. I was wrong. But what I was wrong about was not prayer itself. I was wrong about what prayer actually is. Let me take you back to a specific morning. I was 41 years old, sitting alone in a small study, surrounded by books I had read and ideas I had absorbed but had not yet fully lived. I had been studying the relationship between mind, consciousness, and human experience for years by that point, and something clicked, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet, irreversible certainty of a key turning in a lock. Prayer is not asking. Prayer is knowing. Real prayer. The kind that actually moves mountains, the kind that reshapes circumstances, the kind that the greatest minds across every tradition and century have pointed toward. is not a petition sent upward in hope. It is a state of consciousness. It is the deliberate act of aligning your inner world so completely with what you desire that the desire becomes, in your mind and feeling, already real. Think about what that means. Truly think about it. When you pray from fear, you are broadcasting fear. When you pray from lack, you are impressing lack upon the subconscious mind. And the subconscious, faithful and precise as always, delivers exactly what it receives. Not what your words are asking for, what your emotional state is declaring as real. But when you enter a state of genuine gratitude for something not yet visible, when you actually feel in your body, the relief, the joy, the quiet certainty of a desire already fulfilled, when you hold that feeling with consistency and conviction, not as a performance but as an inner knowing, something shifts. Inside you first. And then, with a reliability that will astonish you, outside you as well. This is what the great teachers meant. This is what every mystical tradition, stripped of its cultural clothing, has always been pointing toward. Consciousness held in a state of wholeness attracts wholeness. Consciousness held in a state of completion attracts completion. After that morning in my study, I changed how I prayed entirely. I stopped asking. I started knowing. I would sit quietly, close my eyes and feel, with every cell in my body, the reality of what I was moving toward. Not wishing for it. Not hoping for it. Feeling it as done. Feeling it as now. And then I would open my eyes and go about my day, not with the frantic energy of someone chasing a dream, but with the calm, grounded energy of someone who has already received it and is simply watching it arrive. You know what I discovered? That calm is not passive. That knowing is not arrogance. That feeling your desire as already real is not self-deception. It is the most sophisticated, most powerful form of cooperation with the intelligence that runs through all things. Ask yourself right now, when you think about what you most deeply want, what feeling lives beneath the wanting? Is it hunger, fear, desperate hoping? Or is it quiet certainty, gratitude, the deep peace of someone who already knows? Because the feeling beneath the want is the actual prayer being heard. And the next discovery, the one that made all of this finally make complete sense, is about exactly why feeling is everything. Logic will tell you what you want. Feeling will bring it to you. That single distinction, so simple it almost sounds too simple, is the difference between a life spent wanting and a life spent receiving. Between people who understand the laws of consciousness intellectually and people who actually live them. Between knowing the map and walking the territory. And for most of my early life, I was the person who knew the map perfectly and stood completely still. Because I trusted my mind. I trusted analysis. I trusted the careful, rational construction of goals and plans and strategies. And those things have their place. I am not asking you to abandon reason. But reason alone without feeling is a compass with no magnetic north. It points in directions. It cannot pull you forward. Let me tell you about a man I worked with years ago. Brilliant. Educated. He could articulate with absolute precision everything he wanted in his life. The career, the relationship, the financial freedom, the sense of purpose. He had written it all down. He had read every book. He could quote chapter and verse from every great teacher of the mind. And yet nothing was moving. Nothing was changing. His life remained year after year frustratingly identical to itself. When I sat with him and listened carefully, I heard what was missing. Every time he spoke about his desires, his voice was flat. Precise, but flat. He was describing his dreams the way a scientist describes a specimen, with accuracy and complete emotional detachment. He had mastered the language of transformation without ever letting transformation touch him. Feeling is not decoration. Feeling is the current that carries the signal. The subconscious mind does not respond to words. It does not respond to lists or vision boards or carefully written affirmations recited without conviction. It responds to emotional states, to the vibrational reality of what you are actually feeling in any given moment. Neville Goddard understood this. William James understood this. And after years of watching people transform and watching others remain stuck despite knowing everything they needed to know, I understand it with a certainty that goes beyond intellectual agreement. You must feel it real before it becomes real. Not pretend. Not perform. Actually feel it. And there is a difference, a crucial, everything changes difference between the two. Pretending is surface. It is saying the words while something underneath whispers that you do not actually believe them. Feeling is when you drop below the words entirely and locate the actual emotional texture of the life you are choosing. The warmth of it. The relief of it. The quiet joy of it. The sense of rightness, of coming home to something that was always meant to be yours. When I finally learned to do this, to feel first and trust the outer world to catch up, the results were not subtle. They were dramatic. Not because I had discovered magic, because I had finally stopped blocking what was trying to reach me. Here is a practice I want to offer you. Right now, think of one thing you deeply desire. Not abstractly, specifically. Now stop thinking about how it will happen. Stop calculating the steps. Stop measuring the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Instead, close that analytical door gently and ask yourself one question only. What would it feel like to already have this? Find that feeling. It might be small at first, like a match struck in a dark room. Stay with it. Let it grow. Let it move through your body. Let it become, for just this moment, more real than the circumstances currently surrounding you. That feeling, that precise, specific, genuinely inhabited emotional state, is the secret the greatest teachers across all of human history have been pointing toward. Each in their own language, from their own tradition, in their own time. Feeling is not the reward that comes after the manifestation. Feeling is the cause of it. And now that you carry that understanding, what happens when the darkness comes? What happens when doubt arrives, as it always does, and tries to convince you that none of this is real? That is exactly where we are going next. There will be a moment, and if it has not come yet, it will, when everything you believe gets tested. Not gently. Not with a quiet philosophical challenge you can think your way through over a calm cup of tea. It will come when you are already tired. When you have already been trying. When you have already given so much of yourself that you genuinely are not sure what is left. And in that moment, every beautiful truth you have ever learned about consciousness and power and light will feel like words on a page, distant, theoretical, maddeningly out of reach. I want to talk about that moment. Because most teachers skip it. They give you the principles and the practices and the inspiring stories of transformation, and they leave out the part where the floor disappears beneath you and you are not sure which way is up. I will not leave that part out. Because I have lived it. And I think it is the most important part of all. The darkest period of my life came when I was in my mid-40s. I had built something meaningful. I had helped people. I had seen the principles I taught work in my own life and in the lives of countless others. And then, within the space of a single year, I lost things I did not believe I could survive losing. A relationship that had been my anchor. My health, which began failing in ways that frightened me deeply. And perhaps most devastatingly, my certainty, my absolute bedrock conviction that the universe was working in my favor. That certainty shattered, and I did not know how to be myself without it. I remember a specific night, lying on the floor of my study, not dramatically, just because the floor felt more solid than anything else, staring at the ceiling and feeling something I can only describe as complete interior silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that follows an explosion. The kind where everything has gone so quiet you start to wonder if anything is still alive in there. And in that silence, something happened that I did not expect. Instead of an answer, instead of a rush of reassurance or a sudden flood of returned certainty, there was simply a presence. Quiet, steady, completely unimpressed by the storm that had just passed through me. Like bedrock that does not care how hard the earthquake shook, it is still there, still solid, still exactly what it has always been. That presence was my own deeper consciousness. The part of me that existed beneath the fear, beneath the grief, beneath the story of everything falling apart. And in that moment of total emptiness, I discovered something I could never have found any other way. You cannot lose what you actually are. You can only temporarily forget it. Darkness does not mean the light is gone. It means you are being asked to find it inside yourself rather than in your circumstances. And that interior finding is the most profound and permanent form of transformation available to a human being. Because anything you find outside yourself can be taken. But what you discover in the depths of your own consciousness belongs to you absolutely and forever. The doubt will come. The fear will arrive. The night will fall when all your practice and all your knowing feels like it has abandoned you completely. And when it does, I want you to remember this. Do not fight the darkness. Do not panic at its presence. Do not conclude from its arrival that everything you believe is false. Simply go deeper. Below the fear. Below the story. Below the noise of everything that feels like it is falling apart. Go down into that bedrock place inside you where the silence is not empty but full, where the stillness is not dead but impossibly alive. That is where your real power lives. Not in the moments when everything is going beautifully. In the moments when everything is not, and you choose from the very floor of yourself to keep the light burning anyway. That choice is not weakness surrendering to hope. That is the most courageous act a conscious human being can perform. And it leads, always, without exception, to the next discovery. Something inside you already knows the answer. Not the thinking part. Not the part that analyzes and strategizes and worries at 3 a.m. Something deeper. Something that existed before you learned to doubt yourself, before you inherited other people's limitations, before the world taught you to look outside yourself for permission and direction and truth. Something that has been quietly, patiently, persistently available to you every single moment of your life, waiting for you to stop the noise long enough to hear it. I call it infinite intelligence. Others have called it God, the universe, the higher self, the deeper mind. The name matters far less than the recognition. Because the moment you truly recognize that this intelligence exists within you, not above you, not beyond you, not withheld from you until you earn it, everything changes. The way you make decisions changes. The way you face uncertainty changes. The way you understand your own potential changes so completely that the person you were before that recognition feels like someone you read about in a story. Let me tell you about a moment that demonstrated this to me in a way I could not argue with. Years ago, I was working with a woman, a physician, scientifically trained, deeply skeptical of anything she could not measure or verify. She came to me not because she believed in what I taught, but because she had run out of other options. She was facing a professional crisis that had paralyzed her completely. A decision with consequences so significant that every time she tried to think her way through it rationally, she ended up more confused, more anxious, more lost than before. I asked her to stop thinking about it. Completely. Not forever, just for 1 week. Every time the problem rose to the surface of her mind, she was to gently redirect her attention downward, below the thinking, into the stillness, and simply trust that something within her already held the answer and would deliver it when she stopped blocking it with analysis. She looked at me the way brilliant skeptics always look at ideas that threaten their framework, with polite, barely concealed dismissal. She came back 8 days later. On the 5th day of the practice, she told me, she had woken at 4 in the morning with a clarity so complete, so specific, so fully formed that it did not feel like a thought she had produced. It felt like something she had received. Every element of the decision was resolved. Every concern she had wrestled with for months had an answer. And the answer, when she acted on it, proved to be precisely correct in ways that continued to reveal themselves over the following year. Was that magic? No. Was it coincidence? I do not believe so. It was infinite intelligence, that deeper layer of mind that processes without the interference of fear, without the distortion of ego, without the limitations of what we consciously believe is possible, delivering what it had always been capable of delivering, the moment it was finally given enough silence to be heard. This intelligence is not reserved for the spiritually advanced or the exceptionally gifted. It is not a reward for good behavior or years of disciplined practice. It is your birthright. It is as available to you right now in exactly the life you are currently living as oxygen. The only question is whether you are breathing. Most people are holding their breath, gripping their problems so tightly, thinking so furiously, worrying so constantly, that the still small voice underneath all that noise never gets a single moment of genuine quiet in which to speak. Here is what I want you to try. Not someday. Starting today. Once each day, just once, find 5 minutes of complete interior stillness. Not silence from the world necessarily. Silence inside yourself. Release the problem. Release the question. Release the need to figure it out right now. And simply rest in the knowing that an intelligence far greater than your conscious mind is already working on your behalf, already moving pieces you cannot see, already preparing answers you have not yet thought to ask for. Trust that. Not blindly. Not naively. Trust it the way you trust your heart to beat without your supervision, because it is exactly that reliable and exactly that close. And what do you do with all of this every single ordinary day? That is precisely where we are headed now. Understanding truth is one thing. Living it every ordinary, imperfect, distracted day is something else entirely. And this is where most people quietly stumble. Not because they lack intelligence or sincerity or genuine desire for change, but because transformation sounds magnificent in moments of inspiration and then meets the alarm clock at 6 in the morning, the difficult conversation waiting at work, the bill that arrived unexpectedly, the old habit that resurfaces without warning, and suddenly the distance between principle and practice feels enormous. So let me bring everything we have explored together down to the ground, down to the daily, down to the real and specific and utterly unglamorous practice of living consciously inside an ordinary human life. The first thing I changed, and the thing I have never stopped doing, was owning my mornings completely. Before the world gets its hands on you. Before the notifications and the news and the noise of other people's agendas begin filling the space of your mind, that first quiet window of consciousness after waking belongs to you absolutely. And what you do with it sets the electromagnetic tone of your entire day. Not metaphorically, literally. The thoughts and feelings you inhabit in those first waking moments begin broadcasting immediately to the subconscious, which then filters every subsequent experience of the day through whatever signal it received at the start. So every morning, before anything else, I spend time deliberately choosing my inner state, not performing positivity, not reciting affirmations I do not believe, but genuinely, quietly locating gratitude, reaching for it the way you reach for something solid in the dark. Finding one true thing. Even on the hardest mornings, there is always one true thing that I can genuinely feel grateful for, and holding it, letting it expand, letting it become the foundation under the rest of the day. Then I bring my desire to mind, not with grasping, not with anxiety about whether it is coming fast enough, but with the calm, settled feeling of someone who has placed an order and trusts completely in the delivery. I feel it real for just a few minutes, fully, specifically, and then I release it and go about my day. The second practice is thought monitoring. Not obsessively, consciousness policing is exhausting and counterproductive, but with a gentle, consistent awareness. Throughout the day, I check in. What is running in the background of my mind right now? What story am I currently telling myself about this situation, this person, this challenge? And if what I find is fear or resentment or the familiar grip of an old limiting belief, I do not fight it. Fighting gives it power. Instead, I simply redirect, gently, firmly, the way you guide a child away from something harmful, with authority but without drama. The third practice, and perhaps the most quietly powerful of all, is deliberate appreciation. Not gratitude as a concept, but active, specific, eyes-open appreciation of what is already here. The conversation that went well. The body that carried you through the day. The mind that is capable of receiving and holding these ideas. The simple fact of being alive in a world of staggering beauty and possibility. Appreciation is not naive. It is the most sophisticated form of consciousness management available, because the mind that is genuinely appreciating what it has cannot simultaneously be broadcasting the frequency of lack. And every night, returning to what we explored earlier, planting the subconscious with intention before sleep. Closing the day not with a review of everything that went wrong, but with a deliberate return to the feeling of everything being right, of life moving forward, of the next chapter already written in light. None of this requires perfection. Some mornings the gratitude is hard to find. Some days the monitoring slips and you catch yourself 20 minutes deep into an anxious spiral before you even notice. That is not failure. That is being human. The practice is not about achieving a permanent state of elevated consciousness. It is about returning, again and again and again, with patience, with humor when you can manage it, with the deep self-compassion of someone who understands that growth is not a straight line but a living, breathing, beautifully imperfect spiral moving always upward. You are not trying to become someone else. You are remembering who you have always been and choosing one ordinary day at a time to live from that place. And everything we have walked through together, every truth, every practice, every hard and beautiful discovery, has been leading to this final, most important moment. We have come a long way together. And before anything else, I want you to feel what that means. Not intellectually. Actually feel it. Because you did not just sit here passively absorbing information. Something in you leaned forward, Something in you recognized truth when it arrived, the way the body recognizes water after a long thirst. That recognition, that resonance, is not accidental. It is your deeper consciousness confirming what it has always known, finally hearing it spoken aloud in a language it remembers. You are not broken. You never were. You were simply living inside a version of yourself that was built from borrowed beliefs, inherited fears, and a story that was handed to you before you were old enough to question whether it was true. And today, right here, in this moment, you are choosing something different. You are choosing to remember. Here is the truth I want to leave burning inside you long after this moment has passed. Long after the details fade and the specific words blur and life rushes back in with all its noise and demand and beautiful complexity. Consciousness is not something you have. It is something you are. You are not a physical being occasionally having spiritual experiences. You are an infinite, luminous, creative consciousness temporarily expressing itself through a human life. And that consciousness, your consciousness, is not separate from the intelligence that designed the stars and encoded mathematics into the spiral of a seashell and placed in the human heart a hunger for meaning that nothing small has ever been able to satisfy. You are connected to all of it. You have always been connected to all of it. The light I have been talking about, the light in the title, the light running beneath everything we have explored, is not a metaphor. It is the most literal description of what you are that human language can manage. Science tells us that at the subatomic level, matter is mostly space and energy. That what appears solid is vibrating light. That the boundary between you and the world around you is far less absolute than it appears. Your consciousness is not trapped inside your skull. It is reaching always into the field of infinite possibility that surrounds and permeates everything. And what you hold in that consciousness, with feeling, with conviction, with the quiet certainty of someone who knows, you draw from that field into the visible, tangible reality of your life. This is not power that belongs to the exceptional. This is not reserved for the spiritually advanced or the naturally gifted or the ones who somehow got a head start. This belongs to you, completely, without condition, without exception. It has always belonged to you. So here is what I am asking you to carry forward. Not a technique, not a formula, a decision. A single, clear, irreversible decision made from the deepest place inside yourself. Decide that you are done living from the outside in. Decide that from this moment forward you build your reality from the inside out, from consciousness to circumstance, from feeling to form, from the light within to the life without. Decide that the story you tell about yourself will be one you consciously chose, not one you passively inherited. Decide that the subconscious garden of your mind will be tended with intention, watered with gratitude, planted with the seeds of the life you are genuinely here to live. And on the hard days, because they will come and they will be hard, decide that you will go deeper instead of giving up, that you will find the bedrock beneath the storm, that you will remember even when remembering is difficult, that the darkness has never once extinguished a light that refused to stop burning. You were born carrying something the world needs. A specific light. A specific frequency. A specific contribution that only you, in all of human history, are positioned to make. Nobody else has your exact combination of experience, perspective, hunger, and hard-won understanding. Nobody else can fill the precise space in the world that you were designed to fill. Living light is not about perfection. It is not about having everything figured out. It is about choosing every single day to let what is real inside you be more powerful than what is loud around you. That is the whole teaching. That is everything. Now go live it.